Hello, good afternoon. The Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab has said a comment by the French President suggesting Northern Ireland is not part of the UK is offensive. Emmanuel Macron made the remark during a meeting with Boris Johnson at the G7 in Cornwall. Today is the final day of the summit, where world leaders have agreed, amongst other issues, to adopt strict measures on coal-fired power stations to help tackle climate change. Our diplomatic correspondent James Landau reports.
There's an old saying at summits: when a diplomat says it's all going swimmingly, that means there's a row. For the Prime Minister this morning, a refreshing break from talks still dogged by disagreements with the EU over trade with Northern Ireland. European leaders want Britain to stick to a deal that means there'd be trade checks across the Irish Sea. The UK says that would be disruptive and divisive and is resisting an export ban on sausages. Behind the smiles yesterday, Mr Johnson asked President Macron what he would do if Toulouse sausages couldn't be moved to Paris. The French leader reportedly said there was no comparison because the two cities were in the same country.
And talk about how we've got here.
The suggestion Northern Ireland was not part of the UK infuriated ministers.
Yeah, I think it is offensive. We wouldn't dream of talking of northern region of Italy, the German Länder, or other provinces, particularly ones where there are these nationalist pressures. We wouldn't dream of talking about those areas in those terms. What we want is a bit of respect from the other side, a bit of flexibility, a bit of goodwill.
Okay.
French spokesman insisted Mr Macron merely said Northern Ireland was on an island and the geographic situations were different. But once again, the row overshadowed talks among G7 leaders, focusing today on the environment. The fear among protesters in Cornwall is the G7 won't promise developing countries enough money to tackle the effects of climate change. And other campaigners say the 1 billion doses of COVID vaccine the G7 is promising poorer countries is too little, too late.
I think this summit, I'm afraid, will also go down as an unforgivable moral failure when the richest countries are sitting round the table with the power to do something about it. Now that we've discovered the vaccine, we have not set out the comprehensive plan that will deliver vaccination by the middle of next year.
From the fly-pasts to the beaches, this summit was designed to be a showcase of cooperation among liberal democracies around the world. That's proved something of a challenge closer to home.
And James joins us now. James, the Prime Minister juggling these final G7 meetings ahead of a big lockdown decision in England.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, officials are still making clear no final decision has been made. The Prime Minister will leave for Cornwall today and go back to London for meetings on this issue, and then also meetings tomorrow before that decision is made. But it's clearly pointing in one direction towards some kind of delay of the lifting of the final restrictions. The key phrases the Prime Minister and ministers have been using in the last 24 hours is caution and irreversibility. In other words, that when they make that decision to lift those regulations and controls, they don't want to have to go ahead and reimpose them for 4 weeks, 2 months, whenever, in the future. So in other words, they want us to go carefully, and the key thing that's concerning them is transmissibility. And what Dominic Raab, the Foreign Secretary, is making clear this morning is they want to make sure that the link between transmission and going to hospital is severed as much as possible.
James, many thanks. James Landau, our diplomatic correspondent. Well, as we've been hearing, the Prime Minister is due to give that update tomorrow on lifting COVID-19 restrictions in England. This morning, the Foreign Secretary said the vaccination programme had weakened the link between infections and the numbers needing hospital treatment. But others warned that going ahead with unlocking could fan the flames of the pandemic. Our health correspondent Jim Reid has more.
This is not really the position ministers wanted to be in this weekend. Tomorrow, a crucial decision needs to be made, whether to go ahead with the final stage of unlocking in England a week later. But the emergence of the Delta variant, first identified in India, has made that call more difficult. It now makes up almost all new cases and may be 60% more transmissible than the older Kent or Alpha strain. At the moment, infections are still far below the levels seen in January, but they have been doubling every week in some parts of England and Scotland. Speaking on the Andrew Marr programme, a government advisor said relaxing restrictions further could fan the flames of the pandemic.
The way I look at it is if we're driving down a road and you're coming up to a bend and you're not quite sure what's around that bend, but you think there might be something bad, you don't put your foot on the accelerator. If anything, you slow down, not speed up. And I think it's analogous to that. I think we've got to be really cautious.
The key question is whether that rise in infections will lead to a significant spike in hospital admissions. Surge testing and the vaccine rollout should help prevent that, but just 56% of adults have had their second dose, leaving many not yet fully protected. Ministers say the latest data on that link between rising cases and severe disease will be critical ahead of the decision on whether to press ahead with unlocking on June 21st. Jim Reid, BBC News.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is expected to be ousted after 12 years in power later when Parliament votes on a new government. An unprecedented coalition of parties has a majority of just one seat. The prospective government would end more than 2 years of political paralysis there, in which 3 elections resulted in stalemate. Football clubs and players across the world have sent messages of support to the Danish midfielder Christian Eriksen. He collapsed during his country's European Championship match against Finland yesterday, but is now conscious in hospital. Medics have confirmed the former Tottenham star received heart massage on the pitch. Our Europe correspondent Nick Beak is in Copenhagen. Nick?
Ben, the medics here at the University Hospital are continuing their work, carrying out more tests, trying to work out why a seemingly fit and healthy 29-year-old collapsed last night. But there has been really encouraging news from the Danish Football Association today, saying they've been able to speak to the player and that he wanted to send his best wishes to the colleagues, the teammates last night who formed that quite incredible human chain as he was receiving the life-saving treatment on the pitch. Also, there was thanks in particular for fans across the world, but also the Danish and the British royal family, because of course there is a link with the United Kingdom, Christian Eriksen having played for 7 seasons in North London at Tottenham Hotspur. But certainly there is a feeling today that football fans far and wide are sharing in this sense of relief. And even though Denmark lost the game last night, Ben, there is a headline here today which says Denmark lost, but life won.
Nick Beak in Copenhagen, thank you very much. Well, on the pitch, the tournament continues. Thousands of fans are heading to Wembley Stadium to watch England start their Euro 2020 campaign. In just over an hour's time, Gareth Southgate's side face Croatia, the team that knocked them out of the World Cup semi-finals 3 years ago. Our sport correspondent Natalie Perks is at Wembley for us. It's some opening game, Natalie.
Yep, there's around 22,500 people here, the biggest crowd we've had since the start of the pandemic. They're already flooding in, putting up their flags, and let me tell you, it is hot here pitchside. Team news has just come in. Harry Maguire, as expected, not fit enough to start. So Gareth Southgate's gone with a back 4. Kieran Trippier at left back, interestingly enough. Rice, Phillips and Mount in midfield, with Sterling, Phil Foden and Kane, of course, leading the line. Chilwell and Sancho haven't made the matchday squad. Now, Southgate has urged his side to bring everything as they try and win the Euros for the first time. They need to get off to a win, something they've never achieved in the history of the Euros. 9 of this squad were in Russia to experience that heartbreak against Croatia. They're one of the youngest squads in this tournament, and they've collectively decided, of course, to continue taking the knee for racial equality. Croatia will not, and there are some fears that some fans could boo them. Last night, the FA issued a statement urging fans to clap them, to say the gesture is not aligned to any political ideology, and asking them to please respect their wishes. The statement ended by saying they will do their best for you. Please do your best for them.
Natalie, enjoy the game. Our sports correspondent, Natalie Perks. And sticking with sport, cricket and New Zealand have secured their first Test Series win in England since 1999. They needed just an hour this morning at Edgbaston to reach their second innings target of 38, having bowled England out for 122 in their second innings. The comprehensive victory means New Zealand take the 2 Test Series 1-0. You can see more of all of those stories on the BBC News channel. The next news here on BBC One is at 20 to 7. Have a good afternoon. Bye for now.